Alabama, right on the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, and you grew up out there?
Yeah, yeah. Born, raised, moved away for college as soon as I could. Went to grad school near there
Mm-hmm.
in Mobile, and then runned off Hattiesburg, New Orleans, then back home for a minute, and then here.
Where'd you go to college for?
English. I got a bachelor's in literature with a minor in creative writing,
Okay.
and then I got a half a master's in English.
What's a half a master's?
It's where you get a doctorate, and I'm too fucking drunk.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah.
a half a master's in English is.
So things like writing is your thing.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm not like, if you see me on stage, you'll probably you know, hopefully you won't notice as much nowadays. But when I first started, it was very evident. I was not one of those comics that was going to get by on like charisma.
Mm.
I wasn't one of those like, oh, this guy's really charismatic. We can put him on a stage. He'll find his way to being able to write good jokes.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was, it was, I had to,
Writing all the way.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And still sometimes 8 years in, and I'll every now and then, not on a show, but on a mic, I'll slip into doing instead of a performance, doing a recitation, which is abysmal.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, there's so many styles in stand up. Like I used to be the exact opposite. I had no jokes, but I was just a ball of energy.
yeah,
And then over time I learned like, oh, you need structure and you need to fucking say something. You can't just be up there yelling and running around. And I also came from a theater like improv background.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's helpful. I had a songwriting background, and I wasn't a good singer or a good musician.
Do you play an instrument?
I play guitar and very mediocre. Just 3 chords, white boy shit. Just the, the stereotype about the guy at the party with
Yeah.
that's the extent of my abilities there.
I got you.
But the songwriting part I was always great at.
Nice.
But so I was used to being on stage, and I was aware that like you had to like bring who you are up there with you. But who I am isn't, I'm cool. This isn't like self-deprecating, but who I am is not life of the party necessarily. Back when I was drinking, what I was not welcome anymore at the party.
Yeah. No, I get you. What? So not life of the party, but how would you describe yourself on stage? Like your style, I guess.
So in the best of all possible worlds, it's a kind of playful social commentary in the moment, such that privileged folks are laughing in the moment, not knowing yet that they're agreeing to something that I've said. And less privileged folks are laughing because it hits in the natural way that it hits. So, I like to think of it as, smart social commentary.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crossroads I had really early because, we talked about having the accent. If I had a nickel for everyone who, when I first started, was like, you should lean into the redneck thing, do like a Larry the Cable Guy thing. And I was like, gross.
Yeah.
What the fuck for?
Yeah.
So sometimes I wish I could find a way to fit like playing a clown alongside playing the smart white trash guy. I think that's kind of my stage character.
Do you feel like people don't perceive you as smart because of your accent, the way you look and everything?
I think by the time I get on stage at this point, that goes away pretty quickly. there are some folks that when they first meet me, like, they will make some vast assumptions, not just about my beliefs, but about my intelligence as well. That was significantly worse when I don't know if you would remember it or not, but up until about 3 months ago, this half of my mouth, no fucking teeth.
I don't really.
Yeah.
Are there pictures of that?
Yeah, somewhere, unfortunately.
Okay. I need to find that.
Yeah, it's horrific. But yeah, that kind of, I think, added to a larger, like, existing problem.
It's like being British and having fucked up teeth. It's like you're lean. It looks like the stereotype.
Yeah, but when you're British, they think you're smart.
That's true. Did that ever bother you to be perceived as not as smart as you actually are?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, like, and this was really a thing after I moved up here. Back home, if someone calls you dumb, it's just because they disagree with you. They're not saying you're dumb. They're saying I disagree and I'm too tired to argue about it. But up here, nobody says like you're dumb. They say, unfortunately, we've decided to move forward with another candidate.
Yeah, a little softer.
Yeah. And I was on the job market actually until today.
You got a job today?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes, got me a job today.
Good for you, man.
I was terrified. This second time in a row that I was on the job market, and I got a job like the week that was going to be my last unemployment direct deposit. Really just threaded the needle twice.
I relate to that way more than I want to. I had the same thing happen this whole summer. I'm an interpreter.
Yeah.
So basically, you don't work if deaf people aren't doing shit. And deaf people aren't doing shit over the summer and winter breaks. Like, school's out. They don't go to the dentist or anything. They just chill out and do whatever. Yeah. And so all summer, I'm not working, living off credit cards. And there was a bunch of bullshit that happened with work. And, like, maybe 3 weeks ago, it all got settled. It's very recent. It's terrifying. Being an adult is scary.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. Because what scares me is I remember being a kid and thinking that adults knew things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like, how the fuck are any of us alive?
It's crazy.
Because I'm the same age they were when they were responsible for if I lived or died. And I don't know a fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting older to me is a lot of it's just unlearning shit that you were taught when you were younger.
Yeah.
But perception of being smart or not being smart. So you feel like when you get on stage, you want a point to be driven.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be funny first.
Funny first. I literally was just talking about that. But yeah.
Yeah, you got to be funny first. But to me, I kind of like nobody has HBO anymore. They have HBO Max, right? So what I'm trying to accomplish is funny plus. Gotcha. So, yeah, in the moment they're laughing. But when they get in their car to go home, somebody who's rich is going to go, I am kind of scared of that redneck communist guy. Yeah. I am a little afraid that there might be more like him. That's, and for everybody else, I want them to get in their car and go, kind of glad that redneck commie guy's out there stealing shit and burning down houses and threatening employers, etc.
If I'm to put it in my own words, it's almost like using people's perception of you against them, flipping it on their head.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am definitely going to have to get into the economic stuff because I don't know anything about that and I want to hear more about it. But before we do, what is I guess I feel connected to the way you approach comedy in that for me, I'm less trying to make like a point, and I'm more trying. I'm a feelings guy. I mean, you kind of, I think, have seen me.
Yeah.
Mr. Emotional, and it's an emotional connection. Like my whole thing is funny first, right?
Yeah.
And then I want the audience to feel. I want them to understand and empathize with me.
Yeah. Here's something, if I may, that I picked up on about your work.
Yeah.
In the, as you know from seeing me at Mike's, as any of the comics know, I don't watch a lot of sets. I'm extremely selfish in that I show up as early as possible. I go up as early as possible, and I fucking leave.
Yeah.
If you are not right before me, I do not see you for the most part. Mm-hmm. On occasion, like a brand new comic will be like, "Hey, can you watch my set?" And I'll try, but I have ADHD and I get very over stimulated in there. But in any event, something that stuck out to me with your work is you have this wonderful combination of so the two bits that in my brain are just so connected are you have some material about being an interpreter, and then in addition you have some material about, I believe, teaching jiu-jitsu or taking jiu-jitsu, learning jiu-jitsu. And you talk about a guy with one arm that was able to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And something really wonderful happens through both of those that I don't know if you thought about this or if it was just one of those wonderful accidents that happen in the arts. But in both of those instances, you're empowering. You're talking about the unseen abilities of disabled people, and so both of those bits are these kind of cool underdog stories.
Yeah.
And that's really, really cool to me.
Thank you. That's part of it. It's so a little bit of backstory there. I started learning when I was like sign language when I was like 18, 19. And I was like everyone else. When I first started meeting disabled people, I did we have to tiptoe and we got to be respectful.
Yeah.
And I very quickly found out, like, these motherfuckers, they don't give a fuck. Like, they really don't give a fuck. They're fine.
Yeah.
And I started to find it condescending, the way people treated disabled people. It's like, I get that you're trying to be nice and respectful, but it's past the point of respect and it's becoming condescending.
Yeah.
And that gets on my fucking nerves. And so that's why I talk about it the way I do.
Yeah. I loved that. I loved the one-armed guy that could kick your ass. And what's wonderful about it is the way you carry yourself on stage and off. I've been around the block a time or two.
Okay.
All right. I drank a lot. I've taken my ass whoopings.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to take one from you. I don't want to. And so, like, someone like yourself who you're a very nice man, but at the same time, like, there's a certain way, a certain confidence with which folks who have learned those sorts of things like jiu-jitsu will carry themselves. Right? Uh-huh. There's a certain confidence. There's a kindness, but there's also a confidence there. And people see it and they kind of go like, oh, that guy knows how to handle himself. Not he's going to hurt somebody, but he knows how to handle himself. And then you get up there and you talk about a one-armed guy kicking your ass. And it's just, I would just imagine if I'm in that audience and I've got one arm, my thought is, I hope he doesn't think it's me.
Yeah, thank you.
But no, I would imagine that would be very like empowering to them.
It's well, first to get to the whole how I guess I come off. Thank you. I'm coming to a place of accepting that I'm a big presence. I didn't think that as I mean through insecurities and abuse and all of that. I never viewed myself as fairly big. And I'm coming to realize apparently I'm a big guy. I didn't know that. I know. I'm sure I have like body dysmorphia. When I look in the mirror, I see a 13-year-old skinny, twiggy boy. I don't realize like I'm 32-year-old. You know, I'm 6'2" and 233. Like I'm a big guy. I didn't realize that. So thank you. And to the empowerment stuff, thank you as well. Like that's part of it. There's all of these nooks and crannies of people that people don't think about. And
Yeah.
to me that's important to acknowledge them, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. To get back to, on that subject, I think for me, like, we kind of talked a little bit about, like, how you can be funny in a way that makes folks feel empowered in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, my big thing, like, the big thing for me is very much blue collar to no collar folks.
What the fuck is a no collar? That's prison, right? No collar?
No collar is like, I use the term no collar to refer to like minimum wage jobs, like proper minimum wage jobs. Like if you're a welder, you're still getting screwed, but you're not getting financially screwed as badly as somebody who works at,
McDonald's is classic.
Yeah. So I try to, because I kind of came from a blue collar background and did a lot of no collar work because no one ever looked at me and was like, yeah, that guy can weld.
Right.
That guy can definitely weld for sure.
Yeah.
I trust him with a blowtorch. Nobody ever trusted me to troubleshoot a piece of machinery.
They're not gonna give you chainsaws or anything.
None of that.
Give him a cash register and let him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's gonna steal money, but we will survive.
So you grew up in that environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked at when I was in college. Mm-hmm. I remember feeling deeply disempowered because I would be working 40 hours a week, still, would, have some difficulty, significant difficulty. Luckily, I was good about like, hey, I found like a really crazy cheap place to live, no cable, no internet of my own because I was near the university and there was one that everybody just stole. And my only phone was back when they had flip phones, and I was 19. I was on the family plan.
Yeah.
So
I remember those Nokias.
Yeah. Car that was paid off that my older brother had actually given me, which was incredibly kind of him. So like luckily my expenses were low, but I remember and eventually this guy's going to make his way into a bit, this son of a bitch.
Okay.
I'm still angry at this man 15, 16 years later. I said to him, boss, we need more money. We cannot afford to pay our bills from this job. And he looked me in the eye and he said, well, Michael, this isn't the kind of job you pay bills from. That's how these people think.
Yeah.
That's how these people think. They think that's okay. Like, hey, you're paying your bills from my job. Why can't I pay my bills from my job?
I have questions.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm the interviewer. No, that's. I have so many different angles to take this, but I guess the first one is your upbringing and these experiences, this is why you think about communism and socialism, this is why you put that on stage, is because of these experiences?
Yeah, I'd say so. And they're not that uncommon.
Right.
I mean, that one is a really blatant one.
Yeah.
That's really blatant, like, just completely disconnected. I'm here to exploit your labor and you should thank me for it. But there's more subtle forms of it that we all kind of joke about behind closed doors when the boss isn't around about, giving 30-something-year-olds who are working full-time a pizza party instead of a raise. It's just relentless.
Yeah.
It's relentless and it's patronizing, and I think it feeds itself.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, I mean, to the whole way people perceive you and everything, yeah, I would put myself in the camp of never assuming you to be a socialist or communist. Never
that's
assuming that. And I wonder, because, okay, this has always confused me, and this is gonna be on some level of a racial thing, so strap in. But guys that will say look like you get put in the box that you get put in don't usually associate socialism or communism with anything positive. It's capitalism, it's rah, money, greed is good, essentially. And yet those are the people who need food stamps and who are on Social Security. And the irony is that they are rooting for their enemy in a lot of ways. Why? Because you come from that world, you look like those people, and yet you don't view the same thing. Why? What's going on?
Yeah. Now, I do want to clarify, like, when I was growing up, like, my dad always held down a job, usually, often more than one job, and still very hardworking person to this day, and service technician. So for me, my experience as a kid was, like, we were okay. If I run into a really bad situation and I need $100, I have family members that I could call for that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm an adult, got to make it in the, we all have to be grown-ups. And I'm not like a trust fund kid by any means. But to your question, the best way I know how to explain it is in the eyes of the wealthy, this thing of poor whites, being rah-rah capitalism. The wealthy created race to make that happen. The rich created the concept of not skin tone, but the concept of race,
right,
as a social construct,
right,
to keep a secondary hierarchy in place, because poor whites, when they go to sleep at night, the thing they fear, because they're not all the way at the bottom, right? They're at the bottom financially, but if they dress up good and cut their hair real nice, they believe they can squeeze through those cracks. They know deep down that someone who's black and is in the same position is less likely to squeeze through those cracks. And they take, what ends up happening is basically it gives them a place where they can go, well, at least it could be worse. It could be worse. I could be being policed constantly. I could be being surveilled constantly. I could be, they don't have the language for this, but we could be redlined out of this neighborhood. It could be worse. So thank God we're not them. Counterintuitively, in order to be able to live in that space, many of them have to convince themselves that there's a reason why black people are redlined out of their neighborhoods, why it's more difficult for black people to slip through those cracks. I firmly believe that poverty creates more racism.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you're hungry, you can't think straight. Simply put, if you and I are in a room alone, and we know we're gonna be stuck there for a month, and there's enough food for one person to survive. I know this sounds...
Jiu-jitsu's coming into play.
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely. It is, yeah. It is, though, right? Because you're going to want to live.
Yeah, of course.
But you'll also want to be able to live with yourself. right? And it's a lot easier, I think it's a lot easier for somebody to twist themselves up into saying, it's okay that I was the one that lived because I heard that they, whoever the other is, does X, Y, and Z. Like, you might go, like, at one point you might go, okay, I really don't want to kill Michael, but I want to live. Yeah. You know what? He doesn't have any teeth. Those are lie teeth. Those teeth are lies.
He's clearly a liar deep down.
Yeah. Those are dentures, and he's 36. He did something. He's been doing something, and whatever it is, he'll do it again.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I can survive. And so that's part of it. Mm-hmm. I think that's one aspect, is it's easier to trick people when they're hungry and when they're scared. And none of this is to say that, like, it's okay that Billy Bob is out there waving Confederate flags in people's faces. I personally will always hold a greater grievance against the billionaires that contrived the lost cause myth, which is, are you familiar with?
No, please.
Okay, so the lost cause myth is why you'll see some white people, a portion of the white people, who will still, wear shirts bearing the Confederate flags, will make completely historically inaccurate arguments about what was going on during slavery, about what was going on during the Civil War, about the causes of it, etc. Essentially, it was a propaganda campaign put out, through the education system in order to, well, it's why there's so many Confederate monuments. It was put out there in order to convince folks that these northern elites ruined the South, that they're the ones that destroyed the South. And, there's aspects of it that are, my mother's generation had textbooks. My father's generation had textbooks. I don't know if either one of them in particular had one of these, but that referred to slaves as migrant workers.
So I want to talk about this a little bit from my experience. I'm an interpreter, K through 12. I've had this is what, I'm trying to stay calm. This is what frustrates me about interpreting, and we will get right back to this. I'm just going off on a tangent, is that you don't have your own voice. And the amount of horrific shit I've had to interpret is crazy.
Oh my God.
Crazy. I was interpreting I have to be vague because of confidentiality, but I was interpreting last year. There was a history teacher. They were talking about slavery, and she would not use the word slavery. She wouldn't use it. She would say, what was it? She would say something like indentured servitude, anything that would soften the blow.
Yeah.
And I remember I got frustrated, and I did as much as I could, which was interrupt and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, I just wanted to clarify. Are we talking about slavery? Because I need to know the right sign language to clarify and interpret properly. We're talking about slavery, right?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, the book actually, I'm following what the book says." And, I understand that, but I just want to clarify, just for my interpreting reasons, we're talking about slavery. And she finally relented. But that gets on my nerves, and I will be quiet now and continue to listen.
No, it should get on your nerves.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And also, like, talking about the lost cause myth is, it's natural that there's some really frustrating stuff in there. Essentially, after slavery, as you know, there was this era of Reconstruction. And then in order to stop that, Southern Democrats cut a deal with a Republican. This is before the switch.
Yeah.
Cut a deal with a Republican presidential candidate where they said, hey, we'll let you be president, but you have to end Reconstruction in the South. And he was like, I'd really love to be president. Okay.
Which president was this?
Shit. Hayes?
Okay, I'll look it up later. I just for my own knowledge in the future.
Yeah. The Hayes-Tilden election.
Okay.
It was a complete clusterfuck. Like, we think we have issues now with counting ballots. Like, imagine in the 1800s.
Before, yeah, Jesus.
Shit was just getting stolen. Fucking the train carts that were carrying ballots would just suddenly get robbed.
I just watched Gangs of New York, watching them like. Have you seen Gangs of New York?
Yeah.
Where
a
they're
long time ago,
making each other
dragging
vote, like,
people in.
Crazy shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard somewhere, and I could be totally wrong about this, but that one of those gangs one of those groups might have killed Edgar Allan Poe.
Really?
Yeah, totally random.
History's weird.
Yeah.
I wanted to dig into something real quick though. I was talking to Andrea. I don't know if you know Andrea. She's a comedian, light-skinned girl. Comedian.
Last name?
Austin. Andrea Austin.
Okay. Yeah.
We were talking about race and stuff. And,
Yeah.
And I think that this is something getting from your perspective would be helpful for me personally. I grew up in a very racist area. I'm sorry, listeners. I know you know all this. I grew up in a very racist area, a bunch of trauma and stuff. I was very angry for a long time. Jiu-jitsu's helped chill me out, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's good that it had that effect.
Yeah. I'm a much calmer person.
Yeah, especially good for me, given given our subject matter.
But I remember at a certain point feeling like the behavior was all malicious, and I no longer feel that way. I feel like that behavior it's indifference. The best example I can give is I noticed this when I moved out here. White women don't move out of the way when you walk past them on the street. They don't do it.
Yeah.
And I, for the longest time, I attributed that to a malicious, like, oh, I don't even give a shit.
Yeah.
And what I started to realize was, they don't care. They're not even, it's not even a I see you and I'm going to shoulder check you. It's, I don't view you as a person and I'm just going to walk through you and you should move.
Yeah.
And with what you're talking about, I know that on some level there are mental gymnastics that are going on. I guess how much would you say, coming from where your background is, how much would you say is mental gymnastics versus sincere malicious behavior versus just not even thinking about it? Like, how would you describe those differences?
Yeah. I do want to clarify that all of these things are racism.
Yeah, of course.
And there's no excuse for any of them. I'm just speaking to my experience of how one becomes a bigot.
And I to clarify as well, I agree, no excuse. To me, it helps me rationalize. Like, I just need why.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So how much is, I think it depends on the
person.
Yeah. And my rule of thumb is, this is what has helped me handle the, like, hey, I worked 40 hours and I can't put a roof above my head, that sort of thing. Is my rule of thumb is the more power the person has, the more malicious it is.
Interesting.
White woman walking down the streets in Lakeview, ignoring you.
I'm so glad you said Lakeview because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know the exact white woman that you're referring to. Also she was on the phone very angry with me when that happened, so apologies. No, I think that's someone who, demographically speaking, they're living in fucking Lakeview. They're fine. Their needs are met. I view that, frankly, myself, I would view that, given my rule of thumb, as malicious. There is also the possibility that that particular individual was just off in La La Land. I had a La La Land moment the other day.
Yeah.
This is a brief aside. Do you skateboard by any chance?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
do I skateboard? I tried it when Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out. I was like, this isn't for me.
Okay. I was curious because the other day I had a la-di-da moment, and it was one of those things where like I wondered like, does that person think it was malicious? Because it was a young black guy that I did it to, and I was just walking, boop, 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 and there was someone behind me on a skateboard. I'm like on the phone talking with my hands, and I just about like yeah. But anyway, I didn't mean to take us away from the important part there. It it you know, someone who has their needs met. This is one of the things that bothers me when I hear white liberals in Chicago talk about the South as being racist. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you the South isn't racist. You know, a lot of work was put into putting some extra stink on the racism in the South. Yeah. But I am telling you that when I hear white liberals in Chicago talk about the South being racist, I don't give a fuck what they have to say about it, because if they were born down there, they would have been racist Republicans. Because they were born up here, they're capitalist liberals. You know, so yeah, like, and that's something I view as maybe not malicious, but as
something's in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, some of, you know, to me, if somebody has their needs met, and they're still just being a dick to black people, then yeah, that's fucking malicious. If someone's needs aren't met, they could do any number of things, and it's just pure desperation and fear-based, and I think that's what's happening among like poor whites, is this, you know, this thing of like we have to compete for the most basic of resources.
Okay, this is a perfect transition into communism and socialism. Before we say it, have you seen Judas and the Black Messiah?
I have, yeah.
Okay, Rainbow Coalition. We might have to talk about.
Watched it with a white girlfriend.
How did she take it? It's a rowdy one, but okay, I'm not an economist, so I'm about to do my best to poorly describe my ideas of socialism, communism, and capitalism.
Yeah.
And just correct me where I'm wrong. This is probably what the average person perceives it as.
Yeah.
Okay. If I understand capitalism correctly, theoretically, the idea is basically not dog eat dog, but everyone has the ability to grab as much as they can and build on that, and you have the right and freedom to collect and build.
Yeah.
That's the most simplified version. Collect and build. The positives of that are seem to be technological evolution, like because of competition, everyone's trying to make the best thing. Therefore, the best thing is created theoretically. The downside is if one person is really good at winning this game, is usually sociopaths.
Yeah.
Then other people don't have anything because they're going to keep going. They're not going to stop.
Yeah.
This is a really strange comparison or example, but do you remember Recess, the show Recess?
Yeah.
There's an episode I think you'd love. I don't know if you have Disney Plus, but it's an episode about TJ is like away from school for like a week because he's sick. He comes back and everyone's trading these like Digimon cards, and they've become currency. He starts from the bottom, he starts collecting, and then he hoards all of them, and then nobody can do anything.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating take on capitalism. That's capitalism from summarized version. What am I getting wrong? What am I getting right? How would you...
I mean, I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think that's a fair, back of the napkin summary.
That theoretically, like when I hear about capitalism, and when it's described, especially from a more conservative perspective, theoretically, I'm like, yeah, that theoretically makes sense, but there's fucking crazy people who won't ever stop.
Yeah.
There's a certain point you have a billion, more than a billion is like you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Take a nap.
I know, right? Chill, man, chill. So,
because then we can break in.
eat the rich. Okay, socialism. This is where I'm very ignorant. So, if I understand correctly, socialism is the idea that resources need to be spread evenly amongst a group of people, and everyone should be able to have their bare basic needs met. The good side of this is that everyone has their bare basic needs met, and people are eating, and that's good. The bad side is, from what I've heard, would be that not everyone's doing the equal amount of work, but everyone getting the equal amount of stuff is not fair. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. One of the large things there, two that I want to address that just to add to it is the idea that would be done by a somewhat centralized authority. It would be, the federal government, for instance, socializing healthcare, which would be, in my view, a good step. Universal healthcare. Nobody just ends up dying because they don't have a very good job.
Yeah.
The other aspect of it is, and this is something that hardcore capitalists love to hone in on, is this idea that, now people who aren't working are having their bare needs met by other people's work. Right now, people who don't work are having wealth beyond their wildest dreams, beyond what you and I can physically comprehend. You couldn't fit $1 billion of $100 bills into this space that we're sitting in right now. It wouldn't physically fit. It's so much money, and they're getting that without working. There's even language that commonly betrays it, like, oh, you got to make your money work for you. No, you're making me work for you. Like, you're making me work for you.
Yeah.
But that's a good summation.
And it sounds like for you, it's not. If I'm a doctor and someone works as a janitor, and I know these are extremes, but
yeah,
it's not, though they should be paid the same, it's we should have equal health care amongst all these people. Is that a fair?
Yeah, well, that's a fair summation of socialism.
Okay. What the fuck is communism?
Okay, great question.
Okay.
So there's different types of communism, just like there's different aspects of. I forgot about cameras.
Yeah, we're good. The thumbs up is good.
Yeah. There's different aspects of, or different types of communism, just like there's different types of socialism and capitalism. I can only really speak to the type that I subscribe to, which is anarcho-communism.
Okay. Sounds scary. I'm listening.
Yeah. That's what I really liked about it the most.
Okay.
Like, this idea that we'll even the playing field with the wealthy by being like, and I appreciate democratic socialists. Some of them might get mad at this.
Okay.
But under the banner of a term like democratic socialist, man, they're going to look at that. They're going to be like, we're sending 4 cops and that'll scare off 800 of them. When you say a narco-communist, they really start to panic because the word anarcho is in there. And a lot of people overlook that word, that part. I do not believe long-term that having a government as we know of it is a sustainable thing.
Doesn't seem to be. It seems it's collapsing right now, but
yeah, because the reality is, to my mind, most people are naturally empathetic, our natural tendency will be towards cooperation, and towards helping one another out. So within that, the way I view it in my like perfect world, instead of sitting around talking about, how much should we ask for per hour? How much should we ask for per hour? Some folks a little bit sharper than that. They say, hey, we can't ask for that amount per hour. We have to organize and then strike and demand it. To my mind, that's good. That's not a bad thing at all. I strongly support that. But the only long-term fix is to abolish private property, which is, your television is personal property. Things you enjoy and use on a daily basis. I love to bike. My bicycle, personal property. My other bicycle, stolen property. This is such bullshit. Yeah. My bicycle is personal property. Private property is if I buy a bicycle, not to use it, but to rent it out to people who really need a bicycle. And when you take that into things that are basic essentials to live, such as shelter. So there would be no such thing as a landlord. Nobody can buy something just to make money off of it. Because all that happens there is, you had money, so now you get more money. And now other people have less so that you can have more.
And then through getting more money, you build on that, and here we have a monopoly.
Yes. Okay. So then what other things are private property? Well, I just quit a job at a pizza shop 4 hours ago because I got a new job offer. Well, the oven there, if I were to take it apart and take it with me when I went, I go to jail because I've stolen private property. That is a thing that maybe cost $10,000. I don't really know. That's used to make money. So those things within this framework would come to belong to the workers who operated them.
Okay.
So if you work at a McDonald's, you own the McDonald's. And I don't mean you own stock in the McDonald's. I mean you own, in collaboration with your colleagues, that McDonald's. And once you do that, you're then in control of what happens with the surplus value of your labor, i.e. the profits that the business earns.
And you're more invested because it's not, I go to McDonald's, put on the fucking hat, and grab the fries. You give a shit because it's yours.
Yeah. And so now we have folks who work at a McDonald's, but all their needs are met. Right. Their needs are met, and they have now access to the surplus value of their labor. They have more than what they feel they actually need, and they can democratically, internally, through an internal democratic process, that's not even that formal. That's just in the way humans cooperate with one another. If me, you, and one other person are deciding where to go to dinner, we don't have to cast a vote. Right. We can sometimes see that it's way more important to such and such that we go to a place that's vegan, so we end up doing that because we can tell it's really important to that person, not so important to us, right? And through those processes, they can say, okay, well, we have all this surplus value of our labor. What do we do with it? Do we pay it out to ourselves? Do we set it aside for members of our community who can't work or are choosing not to work? What do we do with it? So workers are in charge in that society. Workers have the ability to decide their own fate as a collective within that society. But it can't be done legally.
Right. Oh, okay. it's intense, right? Because you don't know when the clock is going down. It's like when you run out of material and and you're like, when is the fucking light coming? Okay, so it's interesting. Everything you've described, I would say I agree. I really thought that the personal property versus private property versus public property. I don't think you said public, but there is in this framework there is public property.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I never heard it described as personal property. That my TV or my camera and shit, my photos, those are all that's personal to me.
Yeah.
Private is and I'll simplify it. Private is anything that you buy to use to make more money.
Yes.
Okay. Now, for this to work, it's freaking me out too.
Okay, you know what? We'll just stop for a second.
Well, go ahead. We'll wait for the thumbs up next time.
Yeah, that's my fault. I have I have this like.
Yeah, no, I was freaking out about it.
Yeah, I part of ADHD is like hypervigilance, and like I'll think like oh, I'm doing too much. I got to check in. in.
Okay, so the parts that really connect to me are the community aspect of things. If whoever listens to this consistently, you know how much I talk about that. The importance of community, and the importance of a group. You need people. I mean, we all learned through quarantine. Like it sucks. It sucks to be alone all the time. I desperately want you and Matthew Doyle Perez to be on, and I'll leave and just let you guys talk this out because we talked about that a little bit. His episode started to become one of my favorites now.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I like Matt.
Yeah, his was probably the most contentious, but probably because of that, the most interesting for people.
Yeah.
We've
never discussed any of this, really.
Really?
Yeah.
You should talk with him or watch his episode.
Oh, wow. Did I just say I like Matt and now I'm canceled now?
No. I think to go back to the whole idea of malicious versus not, I don't view him as malicious. You would have to talk to him and shit. That's another thing I'm trying to make sure I stay consistent with. Is if someone's not here to defend their beliefs, I don't want to speak. I continue to have to say this, like I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah.
But his episode has stuck out to me.
Yeah. I don't know anything about his beliefs, so I'll have to give it a listen and and
listen to him or maybe talk to him at the mic.
Yeah, and maybe start that conversation after I listen online because that's the best place.
Yeah.
Maybe in the comments section of.
I'll take a screen cap of the comments, this idea of community. Now, then the more cynical side of me comes into play, where I'm like, there's always fucking one. There's a sociopath or a fucking idiot that comes and ruins it.
Yeah.
And my only concern with this belief system is eventually you're going to get a guy or gal who just can't work with, who doesn't give a fuck, is a megalomaniac and wants it all. And that is what feels like it fucks up the you know what I'm saying? Like how do you deal with that person?
Sure. So in my opinion, that sort of a culture tends to disempower that person. Whereas the culture we have now, I think we already talked about, they're very empowered in this culture. They're like, you just fill out the right paperwork and you can take whatever you want from anybody. If you can find the right forms and get the right bank loan, you can take anything from anybody. But within that context, as I mentioned earlier, we're evolved to cooperate with one another and to have empathy with one another. And some of us are better at it than others. I have my troubles, but ultimately at the end of the day, if I see someone else hurting, if you see somebody walking down the street, you see an old person fall, what's your first instinct?
Help.
Yes. And I saw a senior person fall about 2 weeks ago, and everybody on the street ran over. None of us knew anything. anything about how to actually help, but we all wanted to help because it's a universal thing of like, this is a human being that we want to help. And everything else is kind of tunnel vision. Like, I left my shit like laying around and ran over there to help, and like nobody messed with it. Nobody was going to use that as the opportunity to steal from me. So when now imagine you're walking down the street and you see somebody push an old person down. What do you think the people who are standing on the street then
Jiu-jitsu.
do?
No.
You're up. You got the call,
Jiu-jitsu.
right? The community. No, the community needs you there.
Yeah.
Right. The community needs you to physically protect this member of the community from this other person. Now, that's not your job. That's just a way that you're naturally contributing to the community. Is in that moment, you're going to prevent that person from doing more harm, while the rest of us tend to this other person. And then afterwards, instead of, say, putting that person in a cage for 30 fucking years because they had an addiction issue and they were trying to steal in order to, work, in order to survive that addiction and feed it, instead of putting them in a cage and torturing them, which is what we do now.
Sure do.
What essentially happens is we say to that person, hey, they're going to let you up, but if you try to harm them when they let you up or harm us when they let you up, you're not going to get back up. After this, you have to leave. That person leaves the tribe. It's always been the case throughout human history that sometimes someone is not allowed in the tribe anymore because they are causing danger to it. Now that person has to go out and do their thing, and like it's possible they go out and they raise up their little army and have their little nation state and then come invade, but it's not very probable, right?
Sure.
Because that person isn't being empowered in the same way. In our current society, that person has thousands of people working for them. They're gaining capital, and they can just go and grease the right palm, and then they get to keep knocking old ladies over.
It sounds like it comes down to like you were saying, abolish, revamp. You would have to revamp. I'll speak to America specifically. I can't speak to other countries, but you would have to revamp our society, like change the way we even think about all of this stuff. And here's what I mean. I think I was talking to Harold Patrick. You know Harold Patrick?
Yeah.
We were
God, I love that kid. And
I
feel bad calling him a kid.
He's a fucking kid. He's 21.
But you forget that he is like, when he talks, oh my God,
he's very mature.
Yeah, he's
very
extremely mature. I love that kid. I've become friends with him. I like to think. He's really sharp. I think he has a really good future ahead of him as a comic.
And he's starting young.
He's starting so young. I had a big moment with him recently. I found out that he is familiar with a Tuscaloosa-based southern rock band that I used to just kind of follow around when I was in college. I would when they were doing a show and I was too young to be at the bar, I would like wait for them to pull up in their van and be like, yo, can I do y'all need a hand with some of your stuff? Yeah. That way, that way I could get into the bar to see their show. Yeah. Because the bouncer isn't going to bother.
Just a roadie.
ID and not even a roadie. Like they were a local band.
Oh wow.
Called the Dexatines.
And he knows about them.
And yeah, we were all hanging out. And I was like, I'm gonna turn y'all on to some cool redneck shit. Yeah. And he was like, well, what is it? I was like, they're called the Dexatines. And he's like, I know the Dexatines.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I feel like he has an old soul.
Yeah.
Like something's going on where he's just he is very mature.
Yeah, very very special kid.
Okay.
So tell me what racist thing he said. tell me,
I will
tell me how concerned he was about fairness in women's sports.
I'll send you his episode and Matthew Doyle Perez's episode.
Yeah.
So we were talking about guns. He is a gun guy, and I am not-ish. I owned guns back in Riverside during the pandemic because shit was getting real concerning.
Yeah.
I was in a neighborhood filled with like Trump flags and Blue Lives Matter flags everywhere, and long story short, it was getting scary, and I was like, I need to protect my house and my grandma. This is getting real concerning. But I remember getting the guns and the whole cliche of like, oh, when you shoot it, you're gonna feel the power and you're gonna want more guns. And I shot him, and I was like, oh, if you feel internally weak and you have a gun, I can see how that would make you feel powerful. Yeah. But for me, it freaked me out. I in my head, I was like, what happens to the thing on the other side of this barrel? This is crazy. Yeah. You've shot a gun, I assume? Yeah. Yeah. You have guns?
I actually have a very old bit about this, because you can imagine being in Alabama, there's lots of guns. Yeah. But this is one of those things where it's just a true story. And I was like, well, I have to create a joke from it. So basically, I'm too crazy to own a gun. I think you know me a little bit. You've seen my stand-up. Yeah. This part isn't me trying to be funny. Sure. But it is the case that like I don't have the. Nobody would like knowing that I owned a gun.
You wouldn't feel safer around it.
Yeah. Nobody would be delighted. You telling me you own a gun, I feel fine about that because you're reasonably measured from everything I've seen. Yeah. But like, if you look at my Facebook from 2020, you'd be like, "Don't give this guy a gun." Wow. You'd be like, no firearms for him. Essentially, this is a true story. I called my brother once just to wish him a happy birthday. And he said, thanks. And then he said, I hope you don't mind, we've been using your rifle. And I did not know I owned a rifle.
What? How is that possible? There's like serial numbers and shit.
I don't know.
Alabama's crazy.
It was a gift.
People give guns as gifts in Alabama?
Oh, God, yeah.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus Christ, yes. I received a 12-gauge shotgun on my 13th birthday.
Fuck you. 13?
Yeah.
She's from Texas, so I think
yeah. Rachel's back there laughing at you. Yeah, this ain't even like a. It's
not even a bit.
No, this isn't even and this isn't even like a white guy thing. This is anywhere in the South. This is crazy. A purely cross-cultural, all throughout the South. And the more broke they are, the more guns. The more, and as an anarcho-communist,
yeah, that's the shit for you.
What I'm just saying.
I get you. So the guns thing. Yeah. All this. Okay. So I had guns. I shot the guns, and it made me feel uncomfortable because the empathy thing. I was like, well, I'm shooting this at a human. There's gonna be a person behind this. Yeah. I wouldn't feel comfortable shooting a bunny rabbit. I'm way too sensitive for that.
Oh, you gotta shoot a bunny rabbit.
It would make me cry. I would cry if you took me out rabbit hunting. I would weep at the corpse. And there's like 50 other of them running around, but I'm just too emotional.
It's also very little meat at all. So more recommended possums.
Okay, we gotta kill possums then. I would cry at the possum. I don't like your face. The face you're making behind me.
She knows I'm messing with you about the possums.
I'm surrounded by country bumpkins. But
Oh yeah.
Are they blind? Are they blind? Well,
Yeah.
regardless, I had a gun. I'm happy I had it at the time because of the situation.
Yeah.
It was necessary. But I'm not happy we all have these fucking guns. And when I started taking jujitsu, I was talking. I can't wait for you to see his episode because we go back and forth about this a little bit. But I was talking about how the environment of jujitsu and the mentality that I had after doing it consistently was way better to me. It was like it was you earn the ability to choke someone.
Yeah.
You don't earn the ability to pull a trigger. That's why babies can accidentally get a hold of it and shoot things.
Yeah.
The baby, it's almost too easy to hurt somebody with it. Whereas with jiu-jitsu, I have to get my ass kicked for a year before I can even try to pull off some of this stuff. And I was saying, like, in a perfect world for me, we don't have guns, but everyone's trained in martial arts. And under that same concept of this community with you, it's like if one person wants to start fucking around, well, we can all if we can all take your ass down without having to kill you.
Yeah.
But then the reality sets in where it's like, well, it's the cat's out of the bag. There's guns, like you were just saying, you get guns for fun at this point. And it's like I'm not going to be able to take everyone's guns and teach everyone jujitsu. It's realistically, it just is what it is. And so I think when I hear what you've described, I agree with it. I love it. I like it. I want that to happen. But then the cynicism in me is like, how do you even make that? How do you make that a thing? You know what I mean?
Removing the guns?
No,
thing?
not the guns. Your system, your narco murder system. Like, how does that?
Well, for legal reasons, this is a theoretical, philosophical conversation.
Okay.
And we're riding a certain line where all I'm going to say is we mentioned that the poorer folks are, the more they like having guns. Seems convenient in a way, theoretically.
Theoretically.
In theory.
Yes.
From the perspective of, and again, this is real, this is heavy shit. I wouldn't want somebody to see this and then go shoot their boss.
Sure.
But
yeah.
That's how we get that world.
Yeah.
That's the, it's not a world that, nobody wants to live through a revolution.
It's not. It doesn't seem fun.
But everyone's pretty happy on the other side of one.
Do you think we're headed to a revolution? Is that what your gut's telling you?
No.
Okay.
I am deeply pessimistic. I think I'm very optimistic about individuals. That's the anarchist in me. Like if you read Emma Goldman, she talks a lot about just how cool individuals are. And that's essentially what anarchism is about, is how, like, I know you're a cool fucking person. I know you're a cool person. I keep forgetting you're not actually on the camera.
There's a person here.
But, I know that y'all are both cool. I know that I can, if I, in a world where I had money, in a world where I had just withdrawn all of my rent money, if I left my wallet in here and left, you would send me a message that said, hey, your wallet's here. And unless you had a deep, immediate need, like life or death, I'm starving to death scenario, I would receive all of what was in my wallet, right? In a world where you had a life or death scenario, and you were like, well, I'll kind of starve to death if I don't take a little bit. I wouldn't care about that little bit. I just wouldn't. I don't care about the law at all. But so I'm deeply pessimistic, though, about groups. We don't do well when we get this kind of group think happening. That's how rumors start. It's how rumors start. The thing about, we talked about private property versus personal a lot of people don't know about that distinction. And it's because it's a capitalistic rumor that, well, when you have communism, the government controls everything, and they decide how big your house is going to be, and they decide whether or not you can have a TV in your bedroom, and all this, and that's all bullshit. That's not the communism I'm talking about, ever. But that's how I stumbled on I'm sure you at some point have either heard me do it or went, oh, wow, this is the 5 billionth time I've heard him do this. But the joke where, I mentioned the accent, and then I said, as a communist, and of course the audience is, they don't believe me at first. So they laugh. They think, oh, this is some redneck guy making a joke about being a communist. He's kidding. And they laugh, and then I wait. And then I repeat the phrase. As a communist, I think the main reason most Americans don't like communism is for the same reason I hate NFTs. I don't know what they are, but I do know I don't like the person who's explaining it to me. They laugh again. But now what's happened is I told them twice I was a communist. It took 2 times to get them to believe me. And then I had to be a little self-defacing about it. But I got them to understand, hopefully, by the end of that joke, hey, we don't actually know what communism is. Maybe we should think a little bit about where our money goes.
So in a perfect world, your comedy would... I doubt you think, oh, I tell this joke and it changes the world.
I fucking hope not, because...
If a joke could do that, we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, also, and I mean... Again, I don't want to do time.
Okay.
And whoever triggers that revolution does time. Right? Like, if the system were to, let's say someone heard a bunch of my material, and they said, you know what? We're seizing the means of production at my workplace today. Because the way this happens, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It'll happen like this one place will do it, and then this other spot will do it, etc. That's the way these things kind of occur, historically. It's never, every work site, everywhere, everyone stops. Well, they hear enough of my stuff, and then they go, well, I did it because, it made sense based on the theoretical and philosophical... How deep am I in that camera? This has been a theoretical and philosophical discussion. But whoever is responsible for that first one, they are going to prison. If you're the person who puts it in someone's ear, you will go to prison. That's why I'm genuinely, I hope it's not me, but I am gonna be honest about who I am on stage, and I do want when I get those laughs, I want to make sure I'm getting them for the right reasons. I want to make sure I'm getting them because people are going, oh shit, yeah, I'm making 1/5 of what I'm producing. And where the fuck did the rest of it go?
It sounds like comedy almost gives a nice little buffer. That when we keep saying theoretical, hypothetical, a discussion, comedy, saying all of this stuff on stage in a comedy club is a different thing than on a podium. You're in a different, there's a different way it's being accepted.
Yes, and hopefully this podcast is also covered by the First Amendment, because some of the things I've said here, some of the exaggerations, are intended to be funny, right? When I'm like, well, it's kind of convenient, because I never thought about that connection before, but it is kind of convenient that the poorer people are, the more guns they have. That's pretty good for a guy like me. That works out. Shit.
If it makes you feel better, like 100 people will watch this.
Yeah,
thing.
no, I know.
But
I know there's no actual danger, unless I don't know. I don't know what kind of work Harold Patrick does.
But it's like being the guy. Like, to go back to Judas and the Black Messiah. For those of you who've never seen it, it's about Fred Hampton and who was the guy that. Chairman Fred Hampton and the guy that fucked him over, the Judas, doesn't matter.
Yeah. The snitch.
Snitch ass motherfucker. It's when you're the guy that scares the big people, they're gonna do something. They're not gonna let you just rile people up. They're not gonna let you do not leave that situation unscathed. There's a reason why all of the civil rights leaders of the 60s and they're all dead in jail, had to flee to Cuba, because COINTELPRO.
Yeah. It's the mere fact that someone was having to flee to Cuba, and I don't know shit about Cuba, but I guess it's really fucking hot.
Yeah, hot, and there's sand, I think.
Yeah, there's sand everywhere. Anakin Skywalker's nightmare.
What a deep cut you've just
You gotta learn other languages and shit.
Yeah.
I thought about it recently with the, this is one of those things. I don't want to get us too far off track, because I do want to talk more about Hampton.
Okay.
But there's a refugee crisis right now in the city, right now, and the same white city liberals that will shit on Southerners all day long, that will shit on, and it's not purely regional. Some of it is just rural versus urban life. Those same white Chicagoans will just, with money in their pocket, walk right past these refugees with money in their pocket, with some of them with a alderman who would listen to them. Maybe. That's a little optimistic. And they're going, where are they hanging out? Where are you seeing them congregate for safety is at the police stations.
Yeah, I did notice that. Yeah.
That is mind-boggling, and I'm not judging them for that choice, but I am saying that tells me regular ass people are being dicks to them, like just walking down the street, because I don't know what it's like to be not white, but when I think where I would go for safety if I was not white, police station is at the very fucking bottom of that list. It's at the very bottom of that list. And so that, it's just one of those things. The water's been poisoned. This is what makes me pessimistic, because even though we all individually care about those refugees, we can't find a way to group care about them. And that's just one more reason why a group think is just so fucking useless.
Fred Hampton?
Yes.
Okay. And then I have one more question for you after Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Fred Hampton did you want to talk about?
Well, you brought him up. You mentioned about the Rainbow Coalition. You said
Yes.
something reminded you of him.
I'm trying to get to a place on an emotional level where I can connect with the Rainbow Coalition. We haven't talked about it much here in this episode, but the level of racism that I've unfortunately been forced to endure up until this point has been, I came to realize, really horrific. Like when they just got in my head. I was told that, Black History Month is racist. I know.
Yeah.
And that, crazy shit. And when you're a kid and you're in that environment and something's not right, but you're arguing with fucking adults and they're all picking at your brain and making you feel like you're crazy, telling you that you're crazy, like when the cops would fuck with me, it was my fault because I was dressed a particular way. When I'm getting called a nigger, it's my fault because I shouldn't have been in this area. I'm getting jumped, well, it's my fault because I left school at this time. Like, everything's my fault because of whatever. It's we talked about in the very beginning. It's the reason why. Oh, fuck me, dude. You said it. It was a great phrase. That.
The more power they have, the more malicious.
Not the more power. The othering. There's a word that you used.
Yeah.
But essentially that, like, it's his fault because of any litany of reasons. It's his fault. I have nothing to do with it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
They can't cope with they can't cope with that injustice. They can't cope with the fact that injustice actually benefits them. So they have to rationalize it and twist it into justice.
There you go. Yes. To everything that would happen. Everything. I was lazy. I was ignorant. I'm articulate, so I'm better than those ones. It's like everything. And I came out here and realized, got some distance from that type of racism. Still had to deal with racism in the Midwest because that's
Yeah.
But I came to this place of realizing, like, oh no, it was really bad. It was really bad, and I have PTSD and I have anger issues, and I usually don't assume the best in people, and this podcast has helped me with that. Like, and I'm sure you're used to it, and this is no offense. I was nervous. I don't know you. I gave you my address. You're here in my apartment. I don't fucking know you.
Yeah, outside of a few times hanging out at Mike's.
Like open mics, I don't know you. So there is a visceral fear. I know you're like, he's the jiu-jitsu guy. I don't fucking know if you have a gun. I don't know.
Yeah. I recommend, by the way, next time you're in that situation, because we got a good ways through this talk before you found out if I owned a gun. I'd say open with that.
So do you have people down before this?
Hey, I have this other podcast just for gun owners. Are you interested in being a guest there? Yes. Canceled.
There's this anger. There's real anger, and I think it's justifiable anger, but it's also not always productive. And I'm fighting to find this balance of righteous and justified anger while also understanding and not openness, but not immediately assuming the negative. Trying to find that balance. And you've just impressed me with the way you speak, with the way you've talked about things, the way you've broken down your opinions. And I know you lean into the whole, this is what I look like, but this is what I actually think.
Yeah.
And I think you do it very well. I think that you know what you're talking about. I think you're a thoughtful and empathetic person. And it's nice to get to know you, because I'm not going to have this conversation at a mic. I'm just not.
Yeah.
So it's been very nice to get to know you in depth, what you believe. There's only so much you can get from someone on stage, and that's what this podcast is for.
Yeah.
I
I appreciate you sharing that. It's been nice getting to know you through this a little bit as well. By the way, you said Riverside, California?
Yep.
I've heard things.
Uh-huh.
I've heard things, and I'm sorry that you had that experience.
It's all good. It's just your
but
fault. The last question. Oh, perfect. We have time.
Yeah, really quickly. I think I think it's really cool that you're able to find words for those feelings. I would imagine that's a very difficult first step is to find words like anger and PTSD and I appreciate you sharing that with me because I know that sometimes those are very difficult things sometimes to reveal.
Yeah, it's been a lot. But
Yeah.
Thank you. You ready?
You get up, scoot that way,
Okay.
then get up. So you that's like
What do I do?
This is the camera.
Where do I go?
The camera is you 5 years from now. And you
Okay.
can say whatever you want to you 5 years from now. And then I'll show you 5 years later.
Okay, wait. Say whatever I want.
To your this I didn't word this right at all. You can you can say whatever you want to you 5 years from now.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
no. Are you asking him? Are you saying you're speak to yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Or are you saying ask yourself something for 5 years from now? You know.
Speak to yourself 5 years from now.
There we go.
Say
Okay.
something to yourself 5 years from now. I'm gonna be quiet.
Statute of limitations passed. We got away with it.
And that's okay. All right. Good stuff. That's right.
No.
You want me to say more?
No. I think 5 years from now, I'll be very glad I went on the mental health journey that I've gone on in the last several months. That's been huge for me, and I think in 5 years I'll be very proud of that and very proud of my continued work in stand-up. Also, I should stop being a dick on the internet.